There have been a lot of games over the years that I've seen described as unique. Yumeniki, Hylics, Katamari Damacy, LSD Dream Emulator, Shadow of the Colossus, Death Stranding. These are just a few games that I've heard people describe as having nothing else quite like them. Except that's not really true, is it? Most of these games have sequels, if not spiritual successors, and that's most likely, at least partially, because of how unique they are. Yume Nikki is a prime example for me. At the time it was released, yeah, there wasn't really anything else like it, except arguably LSD Dream Emulator, but now, countless fan games experimenting with the same gameplay formats and concepts. But there's one game out there that I've seen that I truly don't think there's anything like. There's games with similar gameplay, there's games with similar subject matter and concepts, but there's nothing, at least that I've seen, that's quite like Hypnospace Outlaw. This is a game that means a lot to me. I first heard of it about a year and a half ago when one of my friends streamed the game over Discord, and I was immediately drawn to its unique concept and presentation. Basically, you're working as a glorified Discord moderator on a fake 90s operating system called Hypnospace, except unlike the real internet, this takes place within dreams. The game is full of references to 90s internet culture, which, I'm not going to lie, did go mostly over my head. I wasn't alive in the 90s, so all I understand is these alien things are Pokemon, and the whole idea of the game is basically just GeoCities. That's not why I wanted to talk about Hypnospace though, because if this was just a detective puzzle game with a unique presentation, I wouldn't be talking about it. I wanted to talk about Hypnospace Outlaw because despite the game being mostly comedic, despite it being a love letter to an era of the internet I never experienced, I think it's a beautiful representation of the fall of the old internet, before everything became commercialized. Now, I'm fully aware that this is an idea that a few other people have already made videos on. Those videos are great, and I do recommend watching them if you want another perspective on this game and what it means to people. However, I'm going to approach this from a more in-depth perspective. I'm not going to go over every single site because that would be absurd, and it'd ruin the fun of the game if you end up playing it yourself, but I will go over every single case the game throws at you. I'm also going to talk about both the actual design of the game, which, spoilers, I think is done really well, and how I think everything relates to that death of the internet idea. But before we begin, if you end up enjoying this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe, as it really helps me out. Anyway, without further ado, let's boot up HypnoS and see just why exactly Hypnospace Outlaw represents the downfall of the old internet. After a tutorial introducing us to Hypnospace, we're given our first case of the game. This is what most of the game's main content is, though I would argue the real point of the game is just to explore the web pages. Like I said previously though, I'm not going to focus too much on that, so let's focus on the case. We're told to head into one of the zones, Good Time Valley, and take down some copyright infringement related to the character Gumshoe Gooper. I'll talk more about Gumshoe Gooper as a character in a little bit, but all you need to know right now is that he's an old 60s cartoon character and that the people in Good Time Valley really like him. Before heading into Good Time Valley, I decided to take a look around the other zones, of which we only have access to a few: Hypnospace Central, the cafe, and HSPD headquarters. I'm going to skip over that last one since it's just resitting the tutorial. Hypnospace Central is pretty self-explanatory, it's just general news stuff and a page for Merchant Soft, the in-universe developers of Hypnospace. On the other hand, the cafe is the first real zone, containing personal pages for Hypnospace's developers, including its lead, Dylan Merchant, who will be very important later. There's also strangely a lot of music-related pages, making the cafe the closest thing to a general music zone in the game. Music is actually a pretty important part of Hypnospace, with a lot of its characters, both major and minor, being musicians, and I think that's due to its main developer, Jay Tholen, being a musician himself. I'm bringing this up now instead of when it'll be more relevant, because this is pretty much all the cafe has going for it. I don't think it's a bad zone, but it definitely feels like a tutorial zone, since it is. Both in and out of universe, it's meant to get people to understand the whole zone concepts, and I think it does a pretty decent job of doing that. Back to the case at hand, Good Time Valley is basically just old people Facebook. Everybody in the zone is like 50 to 70 years old, and they all have one thing in common. They love Gumshoe Gooper. Why is that exactly? Because he hates those damn communists. I mean, that's what the Southern Gen RR guy says anyway. If it wasn't clear, this whole zone is a parody of how old people act on the internet. Mostly the ones who are more conservative. Obviously there's some nice old people too, but there's a reason Gumshoe Gooper, the supposed right-wing propaganda character, is so beloved by these guys. Honestly, most of the pages here that don't pertain to the case aren't that interesting, but there are two I briefly want to go over. Noble Warlock Design Studio is owned by this guy who thinks he's a wizard, and contains a lot of 3D graphics that are actually used throughout the game. He also has this really funny looking Halloween wallpaper, which I immediately made my wallpaper for the entire game. Carl Burnin' Rubber 50p's page is one of my favorites in the entire game because of how ridiculous it is, and it made me actually laugh out loud the first time I saw it. There's no deeper reason for me enjoying these two pages, I just think they're funny. The case itself is pretty simple. We just gotta go through these pages and mark any instance of Gumshoe Gooper as copyright infringement. The main instances of violations are on the Sandy for Leader page, Sandy's Humor page, and the Gumshoe Gooper gallery in Abby's world. Abby's page is actually going to be important for this whole Gumshoe Gooper storyline later, but for now, all that matters is that she's pissed we removed her Goopers. Once they're removed though, we get paid, close the case, and we're given a new case over in Teentopia. Teentopia is the polar opposite of Good Time Valley. Where the valley was full of old people who love a cartoon fish, Teentopia is full of people arguably too young to be online who love a Pokemon knockoff called Squishers. Our goal here is to remove some harassment done by the user ZaneRocks14, so we theoretically have an easy case on our hands. Zane's harassment page is hidden.
Oh, we were right there, man!
This case is meant to be a tutorial on the tagging and search systems, but before I get into how that works, let's take a closer look at Teentopia. I mean, after all, we don't even know who exactly this Zane kid is harassing. There's a lot more important and interesting pages here, so I'm going to go over all this quickly. I already mentioned Squishers, but there's a few pages referencing them, including a whole scavenger hunt which gives us a Pokerap parody. There's also Counselor Ronnie, who is not a child and is instead an out-of-touch 30-year-old trying way too hard to be cool. He tells kids not to do shonking, which, I mean, yeah, if this is what it does to you, I'd rather not do it. He also has a page full of fun facts, but they're just wrong, like blatantly. Shockingly, there is a reason for Ronnie being so weird aside from him being a parody of how do you do fellow kids culture, but I'll talk about that more when it's actually relevant. The only important pages left now are personal pages for characters who will either be important for this case or the game as a whole, those being Timigeddon, Dark Twilight Tiff, That Brassy Kid, and Zane. I'm gonna skip the first two for now since they'll be more important in the fourth case, but That Brassy Kid is actually the one being harassed by Zane, so let's take a deeper look at him. That Brassy Kid, or Corey as I'll be calling him, is a band kid. Not really in the unfunny Redditor way though, I mean he's literally a band kid. That's his entire personality. He likes pizza, he likes bands, and he likes making unfunny jokes. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with being a little unfunny, but that doesn't matter to the last person I want to talk about. Zane. Zane is the complete opposite of Corey. Where Corey is probably a good kid who's just a little annoying and unfunny, Zane is the obnoxious gamer kid who's trying way too hard to be cool. He's a huge fan of this band called Seepage, which is an obvious homage to nu metal, mostly Linkin Park and Slipknot, and he also seems to be a bit of an artist going off of his comics page. However, as I mentioned previously, he has one more page which is going to take a bit more digging to find, and it's the one with the harassment. Got Game or Way Lame is a page where Zane decides if someone or something has got game or is way lame, and it's just a way for him to bully people while also saying how cool Seepage is. There's two ways we can find this page, both through searching, either through the dumpster or by searching Got Game or Way Lame. The dumpster is basically just something awful, and it contains a link to Zane's page as they gave him an award due to how ridiculous and terrible Zane's page is. And Zane put the award on his profile without realizing it was mocking him. Got Game and Way Lame are just tagged on the page, but tags play a vital role in finding some stuff later, so this case serves as a pretty good tutorial for learning how they work. To complete the case, all we have to do is report the images and text, but before we move on, I want to point out how these characters are really more alike than they initially appear. They're both bullying each other, Corey out of retaliation, and you can even report Corey's Zane Sucks badge for an achievement. In addition, they both have fake girlfriends that they made pages for, and they both have joke pages, though Corey's is a lot tamer than Got Game or Way Lame. I only bring this up because this case doesn't really have any deeper meaning to it, as it really just boils down to don't bully people. The similarities between the characters is interesting, but it's more funny than anything to see Zane bully someone that he's so similar to. Hopefully we won't have to deal with him again later. Our next case takes us to the Open-Eyed Zone, which is full of conspiracy theories, spirituality and religion, and anything that might be considered weird. Some of the funniest pages in the game can be found here, and our goal is to find some instances of an extra-legal commerce called CapaCash. I haven't brought it up until now, but Hypnospace uses a money system called HypnoCoin, which has zero real-world value, and it's the only thing we're being paid in. Even though Open-Eyed is a pretty small zone, I'm going to skip over most of the pages because they don't have anything to do with the case. The one I will go over is Rod's anti-government page, Secrets Uncovered. This is easily one of, if not my favorite page in the game, because of how funny the joke is, since you're put on this ridiculously long page claiming to have secrets, but it's under construction. We'll check back in on this later. As for the case itself, we have two targets, Sherry Heels and Professor Helper. Let's start with Sherry. She's a psychic who takes CapaCash's payments, and we can even find a testament from one of her clients, Gus Parker. Gus actually has his own page which is very spiritual, including a subsection with a grassy area and some angel and Buddha-esque statues. Back to Sherry though, all we gotta do is pay her some HypnoCoin, and then we can report her CapaCash page. That's not all we need to do for finishing the case though, as Dylan Merchant, the co-creator of Hypnospace, reminds us in a message. Dylan also reveals that he and some interns are basically the only ones handling the whole HSPD thing, so we'll hear from him more in the future. Like Dylan said, there's more CapaCash to take down, and that can be found via Professor Helper. Professor Helper isn't a person, instead he's more of a virtual helper a la Clippy or Bonzi Buddy. Like Bonzi Buddy, Professor Helper is malicious software disguised as a helpful tool for navigating the internet, though instead of being spyware stealing your info, he redirects you to CapaCash sites and gives you viruses. And he's also a virus himself. I mean, this is like textbook adware. The whole case is pretty much just a way to show the player that they can get viruses on Hypnospace, though they are mostly silly and pretty easy to remove. Back to Professor Helper, he'll pop up every so often asking if you need help, and if you say yes, all he does is show you an ad for a CapaCash page. For anybody else, this would be unhelpful, but for us, this is exactly what we need. All I had to do here was just open Professor Helper a bunch until I stopped finding new pages, then I reported all the extra legal commerce. Right before I was about to flag the Professor Helper user though, I got a message from Adrian Merchants, the other co-creator of Hypnospace. In a typo-riddled message, he says to keep Professor Helper up so he can set up a deal with them. And just to see what would happen, I decided to report him anyway. Overall, the CapaCash case is pretty easy, and like I said a moment ago, it really just serves as a way to introduce Hypnospace viruses to the player, as well as giving us more insight into the Merchant brothers. This is also definitely where some cracks started forming for me in my perception of Merchantsoft, as before this, we had no reason to doubt they're doing anything wrong. But not letting people buy things for actual money on Hypnospace, forcing them to use the worthless currency that is the only thing we are being paid in, is a bit scummy. At the same time though, everyone we've seen so far who is opposing HypnoCoin is a scam artist, so even if we have doubts, there's still some plausible deniability. I suppose for now, we'll just have to move on to the next case. Case 4 starts with us receiving a strange email saying we have to see this. but Dylan warns us that it's a virus with some gross shock images. We're then given the case to take down the shock images across Hypnospace, which is our first and really only cross-zone case. We're also given access to Cool Punk Paradise, but to solve this one, we're gonna have to go back to every zone and look at every page, even the ones we've already visited. Before I get into the case itself, I want to briefly go over Cool Punk Paradise, since it's one of the weirder zones conceptually. Cool Punk is a completely fictional microgenre built upon sampling a fictional soda ad sung by a fictional character named the Chowder Man, and the closest things it resembles are Vaporwave and C-Punk, neither of which are from the 90s. For a game so focused on replicating the 90s internet, having a more modern reference like this feels kind of out of place, but at the same time, Cool Punk is one of my favorite parts of the game. Not for the music, most of the music sucks ass, but the whole Cool Punk storyline and how it unravels is great. Basically, Cool Punk was made by this guy called Freezer, and it only exists because he was bored. Then he got popular and was forced into making more Cool Punk songs, but the passion is clearly gone, and the genre, which was once mocking the Gray's Peak Cola Company, is now being used as marketing by the very same company it mocked. There's more developments to happen later, but already the trajectory of Cool Punk mirrors what I think Hypnospace Outlaw is even about: the death of the internet via commercialization, and that parallel has only continued more later. As for the case itself, we have 4 victims of the virus to help out, and we can find out who they are by visiting Dark Twilight Tiff and Tim McGinnon's page about True Tranquility. This is what's referred to as a scary in-game, and I assume scaries are supposed to be a reference to creepypasta, despite those being more associated with the 2000s and early 2010s. True Tranquility is actually about the same virus we were sent, and from the little bit we know about Timogeddon, he's a hacker, meaning he's the one that sent us the virus, and the one that infected these pages. Anyway, the True Tranquility story gives us pretty clear hints on who the virus affected. The biker is Carl P. from Good Time Valley, the furniture salesman is Arlen, also from Good Time Valley, the lonely shaman is based on Gus Parker from Open Eyed, and finally, the rock star is Chowder Man.
Guess who's back? I know you missed me. Crunch is here. There ain't no way you're gonna forget me.
The Chowder Man is a washed-up rock star who makes arguably bad music that nobody really likes, and despite being a mostly comedic character, he easily has one of the most tragic stories in the game. Unfortunately though, I can't really go into it now because none of the tragedies happen at this point in the game. Basically all you need to do for now is just remember that Chowder Man is going to be very important later on, and he's going to stay relevant for the rest of the game. After reporting all the instances of the True Tranquility virus, I received another email from Dylan talking about a new Hypno-S game he's developing called Outlaw. It's planned for release with the big year 2000 updates, and as an enforcer, it's apparently our job to test it and see if it works. It does not work. Our headset crashes, and the game skips to 3 weeks ahead on November 26th, 1999. Before I continue with what happens next though, I want to recap what this game's been about so far. I'm sure you can guess that the whole Outlaw thing is going to be important later, and it will be, but right now that's kinda all we get on that front. As for the Hypnospace part of Hypnospace Outlaw, each zone so far has been a clear parody of a certain aspect of internet culture. Good Time Valley is old people not knowing how to use the internet, Teentopia is kids who barely know how to use the internet, Open Eyed is conspiracy theorists, and Cool Punk Paradise is built around a music subculture which could only exist online. This is all stuff that still exists today, and in the case of Cool Punk, I do think it's actually based on more modern stuff, but the GeoCities styling of the pages does definitely lend itself to making this game feel like the 90s internet. As for the gameplay, it really is just a solid point-and-click adventure / puzzle game. The puzzles haven't been too hard so far, which is why I'm kinda just skimming through them, but the way the whole internet gimmick is used to find solutions is really cool, and I think that's something that's kept throughout the game, especially in the next few cases. After the time skip, we're assigned cleanup duty across all the zones we've visited so far, and it's our job to find new cases by ourselves. Apparently the enforcers whose headbands, by the way Hypnospace has access through a headband, that didn't get bricked by Dylan's dumb car game, haven't been doing their job, so now we have to pick up the slack. The real purpose of these cases is just to show us that sites are able to change based on our actions, and they're going to change after each time skip. For that reason, I'm going to just kind of rapid fire through these cleanup cases, since they don't really add much. First up is Good Time Valley, where Abby has organized a Gumshoe Gooper rebellion because we reported her copyright infringements. Several people have put Gumshoe Gooper on their pages, most notably Carl P, who also has this beef brain shield thing on his page. Beef brain is a very clear hoax, which claims that the Hypnospace headband causes your brain to turn into beef, and the only people that believe in it are gullible old people and gullible children. Carl P can actually be reported and banned here, made into an example to show that Merchantsoft isn't messing around and does not want Gumshoe Gooper to stay. There's nothing else more to say here, except that this whole Gumshoe Gooper thing, being right-wing propaganda and all, definitely makes these people come across as more conservative. I don't really want to get political over a puzzle game with a fucking cartoon fish, but I definitely read this whole Gooper debacle as being conservatives complaining about not getting what they want. Skipping over Teentopia for just a second, Open-Eyed is literally just CapaCash again. This time it's only on Sherry Heel's page, so just report and ban her and that's the entire case. Next up is a case in the cafe, where we can find a malicious software called Janitor, which gives people free Hypnocoin. Surprisingly, it's not a virus, but since it would destroy the Hypnospace economy if left unchecked, it's gotta go. All we gotta do to find it is just search up Janitor, just like how Zane's hidden page could be found by searching. Nothing too interesting with either of these cases, so let's move on to one that has more substance to it. Teentopia has us dealing with another harassment case from Zane, this time towards Dark Twilight Tiff. Both Zane and Corey are sexually harassing Tiff over chit-chat. Think of chit-chat as being MSN or AOL Instant Messenger, and we have to report the images just so Dispatch is aware this is happening. We're told not to flag Tiff though, since she hasn't actually done anything wrong. Eventually Dylan comes in and basically says nah, this is chit-chat's problem, and pretty much says to fuck off. While we're on Tiff's page, I also want to talk about this scary she made with Tim called The Tale of the Smolder Boulder, which is based on the testimony from Gus on Sherry Heel's page. This is a great example of how Hypnospace Outlaw almost never introduces something only to keep it on one page, as every fake company, every concept, character, or joke can and will reappear somewhere else in the game, and I think that's one of its strongest attributes. It really makes the Hypnospace platform feel more alive, which is only strengthened by the pages updating throughout the game. As such, I can't really call these cleanup cases bad. Sure, it's padding more than anything, but it is a good excuse to get us to re-explore Hypnospace, which, again, I think is the main point of the gameplay. Finally, moving over to Cool Punk Paradise, we have another harassment case, this time from CP Coldsnap. On his main page we can find mention of a second bad boy page, which is literally just called CP Coldsnap 2, so it's not hard to find. Normally I'd end things here, but there's actually more I want to say about Cool Punk. Remember how I said both Freezer and Chatterman's stories are going to be more important later? It's later now, so let's see how they're doing. Before the time skip, Freezer mentioned that Gray's Peak was going to hold Cool Fest 99, which he would be attending. However, it's made super clear during the show that he was lip singing, and he's a fraud. Except there's actually evidence to show that this was planned. We can find evidence that the mysterious page in Cool Punk Paradise, Father Fungus, is Freezer, and that he planned both his and Cool Punk's downfall, because he doesn't like how it's become a product. Remember, Cool Punk started as a satirization of consumerism, and now it's literally being used as a product by the company it's mocking. So, he hires this guy named Jan Wolf to lip-sing over his music at Cool Fest, ruining Freezer's reputation, so he can go on to be Father Fungus and make something he's actually passionate about. He can't just let Freezer die out like that though, so he still has Jan publicly represent Freezer for the rest of the game, until he mysteriously takes a break until the new year, and seemingly doesn't come back. Father Fungus also makes an alt account called Cool Punk is Dead, which is right there, front and center, when we re-enter the zone. This shows us, and anybody visiting the zone, that Freezer is a fraud and Cool Punk is dead, while also advertising his new underground movement, Fungus Scene. Fungus Scene isn't really elaborated on after this, but we do get to hear some of the songs and see how some people are switching over, either because it's popular or because they genuinely like it. This isn't the end of Cool Punk Paradise though, as Chowderman is still around, though he's also experiencing a personal downfall. Chowderman was also performing at Coolfest 99, and he decided to, for some reason, fly his helicopter as a stunt, killing his drummer and losing his own leg. He puts out an incredibly insincere apology on his page, alongside a music video for his song Christmas Pain in Christmas Town, which is a genuinely great song, and I highly recommend listening to it if you want to hear a silly yet sincere song about regrets and Christmas. Banger aside, the real important thing here is that Chowderman has lost his leg and inadvertently killed his drummer. The people of Hypnospace already hated him, but now they hate him even more, which isn't helped by his terrible apology. If only there was some sort of hidden Chowderman song we'll find in one of the next cases, which would show that Chowderman does genuinely feel remorse for his actions. Oh, would you look at that, there is one. Skipping ahead a bit, one of the next cases gives us access to a quote-unquote zone called FLIST, which is basically just LimeWire. It's not exclusively used for music, but most of the people who have a FLIST page are musicians, including Chowderman. His page contains the song One-Legged Man, which is a hauntingly real song about Chowderman's regrets, and how he hopes he can be forgiven for killing his friend and drummer, Cuff Johnson.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You crashed and you burned, your time has run out. The Chowderman must ask himself, who am I now? Where will you run with only one leg? You can barely hop, and now you must be.
Finding this song is when I realized that Hypnospace Outlaw really was something special. Another game would have taken a character like Chowderman and just made him a joke, albeit one with a tragic ending. Hypnospace Outlaw made him a real person. I'm not going to lie and say he's a super in-depth character, this is pretty much where his story ends, but he still has far more depth than necessary for what's ultimately a background character. And that's a good thing. Hypnospace Outlaw is full of characters like this, and as I said a moment ago, every joke, character, and idea is referenced throughout the game, not just on one page. And that's just one of the reasons why I think this game is so good.
Got so much gold.
I was never book smart, I'm money smart. Makes me more intelligent.
Now that we have the cleanup cases done, we can finally move back onto the normal cases. This next one takes us to Starport Castle Dreamstation, the Nerd Zone, and we're tasked with finding a piece of software which makes pages load faster at the cost of messing up Hypnospace's servers. Upon first entering the zone, it seems strangely empty, and as we quickly find out, it's because the citizens of the Dreamstation have made their own zone called the Freelands. This zone has an interactive map for us to explore, and it's not really that different from a normal zone, but the different presentation is nice, though it is a bit slow to get through. Don't get me wrong though, the Dreamstation isn't all bad. Aside from CapaCash, this is the first part of the game where we can actually see some people criticize Merchantsoft, as they killed off 5 of the nerd zones, which apparently helped get Hypnospace popular in the first place, merging them into the Dreamstation and purposely putting them on the slow server. Much later in the game we could find leaked chit-chat messages between Dylan and Adrian discussing this, and Dylan actually seems reluctant to go through with the idea at first, but decides to do it because it'll be better for long-term business, at least according to Adrian. Adrian also requested Dreamstation be put on the slowest server possible, so that Speedy 1 can be used for the sports zone he desperately wants, which we do see get added at the end of the game. Basically, this whole zone adds to what I think Hypnospace is even about, the commodification and, in a sense, destruction of the internet to make way for things that'll make companies more money. Adrian believes having 5 dumb geek zones will be bad for business, so having a singular zone which is also barely usable will make him more money. at the cost of alienating the people his business attracted in the first place. I'm bringing this all up now because honestly, I don't have much else to say about Starport Castle Dreamstation. I think it's important for the story, and I like its concept, but I just don't find the characters within the zone to be compelling. None of them really stand out to me in a positive light, except Linda, whose page is full of scaries, and the other ones that do stand out to me, I find to be annoying. Gil Secretes, is the creator of the Freelands, but I find his page to be incredibly cringe and not in an endearing way. Same with Gary the Cybercog guy, and kind of same with Ringleader Roddy. Roddy I do think is probably purposefully a bit annoying, due to his voice acting coming off as intentionally bad, but like, intentionally bad is still bad, you know? At least his page is alright, and I do think he serves an important purpose for the greater story later. The other pages in the Freelands are uninteresting, just serving as general nerd pages, feeling more like a checklist than anything. There's a sci-fi page, a game review page, a film nerd / horror page, a D&D page, a fantasy page, a comic book page, and the Wizard Eagle.
I'm the vision of the Wizard Eagle. I'm the beacon we can deepen. Weakens left with naught but free.
Okay, actually the Wizard Eagle's pretty cool. I guess this is also a good opportunity to bring up Net Settler, which is actually an earlier example of people criticizing Merchantsoft, since they stopped supporting Net Settler, which is supposed to be an alternate page builder, or spend 500 Hypnocoin to view their pages properly. Really, the whole Net Settler thing is just a way to make the player realize, hey, maybe these Merchantsoft guys aren't very good a bit earlier in the game. Okay, all that stuff aside, let's get back on track and talk about the case. Like I said, we're hunting down on malicious software, which we can find near Roddy's site on the map. We're given a video and told a hint of how to find the software, and if it wasn't clear enough by the placement of this video, the videos on Mr. Mystery W's page make it clear that Roddy is the one behind the program we're looking for, Accelerator. To find it, all we gotta do is click the screen path and watch another video, which tells us we need a password, which we can figure out by looking at Gil Secrete's page. Then we need to answer some questions, which are easy if you pay attention, and then we can access the software and remove it. Overall, the Freelands is fine. It's my least favorite zone in the game, though again, I do like the idea behind it. I just think the execution is a bit lackluster, mainly due to how the characters in the zone are really just not endearing. I know in the last case I praised this game's writing, but I only wanted to bring up my dislike of the Freelance characters to better show how good Hypnospace Outlaw's writing is for the most part. Remember, this is just one small, relatively self-contained section of the game that has very minor characters. The rest of the game has great characters who are written well. I just think this part of the game dropped the ball a bit. Our next case tasks us with finding FLIST, a hidden zone dedicated to sharing music of dubious legality. I already mentioned Chowderman's song here, so I won't go over what the zone is, especially since it isn't one. FLIST is first accessed by finding a password, which we can do by stealing Gearhead Greg's listed on his site, and then each page has to be searched individually by typing F plus a user's Hypnospace ID number. Hypnospace IDs can be found by looking at a user's information, so this serves as a good reminder that the mechanic even exists, since otherwise it's never needed. I mean, it does tell us when people are making multiple pages, like Zane and Corey with their fake girlfriends, but that's just a punchline for a joke. I don't really have issue with the mechanic only being useful here though. It's a good way to add an extra layer for this case, which I think desperately needs it. Now, not everybody has a FLIST page, so on the surface, it seems like this case is going to take a while to solve, but it took me like 5 minutes. Yeah, so it turns out all you have to do is just go to Dylan Merchant's FLIST page, as it has all of the pirated music we're asked to remove. Obviously, reporting the creator of Hypnospace isn't going to go well, so immediately after we're done, Dylan sends us an angry email and bans us from duty. This leads to another time skip, but before I go over that, I want to go over what I think this part of the game is even about. I've already talked about how FLIST is basically just LimeWire, so I'm going to instead focus on the fact that Dylan is the one we're taking down here. Despite being the co-founder of Hypnospace and COO of Merchantsoft, he's pirating music. If you look at Dylan's page, this shouldn't come as a surprise, considering he mentions using DigiExchange, which was FLIST's predecessor, but the real interesting thing is how this comes into play later. Without spoiling too much, since I'm going to go over this in a couple minutes, Dylan later becomes a highly successful businessman, implied to be sort of a Steve Jobs or Bill Gates type figure, given he sends emails from his D phone later in the game. The fact that this man, who was once pirating and sharing music on his websites, is now the creator of the goddamn iPhone is interesting to me. There's also some clear anti-capitalist or pro-piracy messaging in this case, since none of the characters ever really condemn FLIST, and were only tasked with taking down the illegally shared music because Merchantsoft got complaints. That's about all I have to say about this case though. Again, it's really easy, and it just kinda serves as a way for us to see a different side of Dylan that'll be relevant in the next case. I can't say it's bad though, as it is how we find some important stuff for later in the game. The next time skip takes us to New Year's Eve 1999, as we're unbanned and put back on duty by Samantha. I haven't talked about Samantha yet, but she's a Merchantsoft employee and the one who's been giving us our cases the entire time. She'll be important again soon. What's important right now is that the year 2000 update for Hypnospace came out, and is now known as Hypnospace 2000's a la Windows. The update is super buggy, causing random stutters to occur at all times, likely thanks to Dylan's broken card game Outlaw being released to the public. You remember Outlaw, right? That's going to be important in a minute. The case that we're given here is to stop the Mindcrash virus, which is found on Teentopia and is very clearly made by Tim. The only way to stop it is to input a password, marshmallow, which is what Tim calls Dark Twilight Tiff, despite her not wanting to be called that. This is as good of a time as any to go over the whole Tim and Tiff subplot, since it's relevant to this last portion of the game. If you remember from the fourth case about True Tranquility, Tiff and Tim were friends, collaborating on making scaries, both Smolder Boulder and True Tranquility. However, Tim's constant use of the Marshmallow nickname and general weird behavior makes Tiff decide to stop being friends with him, leading Tim to unleash the Mindcrash just as a way to talk to his crush again. Remember, these two are both kids. Tim is being very stupid with this whole Mindcrash thing, but he's 16. And also not a real person, but that's besides the point. Tim just wanted to impress his crush with this stupid virus. No, he just wanted to talk to her again, even if just as friends, making what happens next all the more tragic. We disable the Mindcrash virus, but the lag is still persistent, because of Dylan's broken car game auto-installing itself. I'll let the next bit speak for itself.
Oi 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 oi. Distraxx. Excuse. Distraxx. Distraxx. Something's not right. Hello, Distraxx.
To Hypnospace Patrol Department
Our headset crashes once again, which does actually cause another time skip, but I want to focus on how this has affected the other citizens of Hypnospace first. Not only are hundreds, if not thousands of people injured, but 4 to 6 people die because of this stupid, broken car game. You can save 2, Carl P. and Zane, by reporting them for copyright infringements and harassments, this time towards Tiff, respectively. The other 4 though, there's no way to save them. Dark Twilight Tiff, Ringleader Roddy, Mavis and Green from Good Time Valley, and the guy behind Secrets Uncovered, one of my favorite pages in the game, all die, and there's nothing we can do about it. Going back to the whole death of the internet thing I think this game is about, this is where it happens. 4 people die to experimental, likely unsafe technology. Unless Merchantsoft has absurd amounts of money, which they don't, Hypnospace will surely end because of this. And it does. The next time skip is so far ahead in the future that it's themed around an archival project, and we can read that, indeed, Hypnospace and the entire sleep-time computing industry at large ended after this. It's a more literal representation of the idea of the internet dying, as Y2K is around when Web 1.0, what Hypnospace is based on, started to fizzle out. Not nearly in as dramatic or quick of a fashion as what happened to Hypnospace, of course, but 2000 was definitely the start of the internet becoming more commercialized. Editing Distraxx here, just wanted to add that obviously the 90s internet had advertisements, but the 2000s saw a big increase in internet advertisements. Think of like ARGs or viral marketing campaigns, and how common they were in the 2000s. Internet ads in the way we think of them now though, I would say became commonplace in the mid to late 2010s. If you've ever tried to go on a fandom wiki without ad block after like 2018, 2019, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Just like with the real internet, Hypnospace was starting to become more commercialized as well. Just look at all the sponsored pages. So really, this outcome was inevitable. Hypnospace was not meant to last. The Mindcrash just caused it to end earlier than it would have otherwise. But this isn't the end of the story. I initially thought that things did end here, albeit on a depressing note, but I accepted that there wasn't any real closure. All we have now is the memories of Hypnospace, and the goal to archive as much of it as possible with our Enforcer headbands. But I soon realized that we have one last case to solve. The case of proving that Dylan Merchant killed those people. Since this is by far the longest section of the game, I'm going to skip over most of the gameplay here and just cover the story beats and what this all represents. I'll talk about the gameplay a bit more later, since I do want to go over how the case works in more detail, but for now, I'll just talk about the two mechanics we're using. The first is the Second Sight, or Eye tool, made by Reckoning Inc., a member of the hacker group Minx. Minx was mentioned several times throughout the game, but they only become important in this final case. The other mechanic we're going to be using is part of the Hypnospace Archival project, and the app of the same name is basically just a Wayback Machine, allowing us to access sites from each of the 3 days we were active. The Hypnospace Archival project itself is made up of a few former Hypnospace users, including Artie, a former Merchantsoft employee who designed the Hypnospace logo, Tamara, a spoken word poet who had several pages, Chelsea, who we know nothing about, and Tim. On Tim's Hap page, we can read that he's incredibly remorseful for what happened, spending half his page just apologizing for what he thinks he caused. After causing the Mindcrash, he served 6 years in prison when he was 16. Tim spent most of his early adulthood in prison because a fake virus he made was blamed for killing people, including his crush. So frankly, it's understandable he spends so much time apologizing. He's also the only person to not put up a request on Hap's Lost and Found board, which is where the first part of the gameplay comes in. We have to find 4 pieces of lost Hypnospace media, which are One-Legged Man, the page of a now famous rapper, a test pet that Roddy made based on the comic he themed his page around, and a weird eye cult that was only hinted at previously. I'll skip over One-Legged Man since I already covered it, but the other 3 things are pretty easy to find. The rapper guy is Red Strike, played by the real rapper Red Strike, and his page can be found in the November 5th version of the Freelance. This page just has some really early demos, but we can find another Red Strike page with some more professional songs, and honestly, they're really good. Highly recommend checking these songs out, especially Remember Me. As for the other 2, Roddy's pet is just found on his FLIST, and the Eye Cult is actually just an inside joke for a bunch of rich people, including Adrian Merchant. It's completely innocent, and I found it easily because I recognize the symbol as the Eye of Horus, and the group is called the Children of Horus. Literally all I had to do was search Horus and I found it. Anyway, once we find 2 of the lost and found items, we receive an email from Hap Chelsea, or should I say, Samantha. She reveals to us that the real reason she founded the Hap was to find evidence that Dylan caused the Mindcrash and framed Tim, and she enlisted our help to do so. Why she waited 25 years to do this?
I don't know.
But the explanation we're given is that the project needed an Enforcer headband for its automatic archival technology, and I guess we were the only person who still had a working one. Anyway, as Sam says, we need to go look at some underground websites for information, which means we have to investigate Minx. This is done with the Eye tool I talked about a few minutes ago, But before I could start my investigation, I received another email. Dylan Merchant, the very man we're trying to send to jail, is now part of the Hypnospace Archival project. He thankfully doesn't seem to recognize us, assuming he's not lying, and as I mentioned previously, he sends everything from a D phone now, meaning he's likely some sort of big tech company CEO, the complete opposite of the young programmer he used to be. The first step for this final puzzle is finding out how to access Minx in the first place, as not only do we need the eye tool, but we need login information as well. This can be found by using I to access Tim's actual site on the November 26th version of Hypnospace, where we can find his Thanksgiving feast of Minx information. We have 5 to choose from: Dumpy, the guy behind the dumpster, Reckoning Inc., Jezzo, one of Merchantsoft's interns, Slushmouth, the guy behind Cool Punk Paradise's Guide to Digital Music Genres, and Dylan Merchant. As far as I know, you get the same content regardless of what you pick, but just for irony's sake, I chose to use Dylan's info. Once we log in, we need to use Safe Mode, as provided by HypnoCure Pro, to read it, as the page is built in NetSettler, unsurprising due to how devoted to it Reckoning is. Minx itself is just a forum, but we are able to find several pieces of info explaining weird oddities found throughout the game. Remember how I said there was an actual reason for Counselor Ronnie being so weird? That's because he's not real. Jezzo made him as a parody, though the parody seems to have fooled literally everybody, since Hypnospace won an educational award due to Ronnie's page. Beefbrain is also revealed to be a Minx hoax here, alongside confirmation that the Dumpster and Slushmouth are also Minx projects. Dylan also has a lot of posts talking about how he's working on Outlaw, which Reckoning is not happy about. I cannot stress enough how much Reckoning seems to absolutely despise Dylan Merchant and everything he stands for, and this is before the Mindcrash. Reckoning's just a hater for the love of the game, which I can respect. On December 31st, we can find Reckoning mentioning his leak, which is visible in the cafe, though Merchantsoft already deleted it, and where he left a backup in case Merchantsoft takes it down. And since they did take it down, this is how we're going to find the info we need. As mentioned, it's hidden via I in the Freelands, where we can also find Dream Tools, a hacker program by Reckoning. This is basically just debug mode, allowing us to get infinite money, amongst other silly things that don't do much. The leak itself contains medical records confirming that Hypnospace is bad for your sleep long term, as the brainwaves during Hypnospace activity are the same as those when somebody is awake. This means that people aren't really sleeping at all, making them more tired, which could lead to health problems, if not death, if exposure is too frequent. This is how the victims of the Mindcrash died, and Dylan knew this could happen. We just need to find the proof he knew about it. This can be found via Reckoning's page, Leaky Piping, which contains leaked chit-chat messages from Merchantsoft employees. This is where the stuff I mentioned about Starport Castle Dreamstation's creation is revealed, alongside discussions for how Outlaw was not remotely ready for release yet. The only reason Outlaw was even pushed out so fast is to compete with Cyberworlds, another sleep-time computing service, but as we already know, the competition wasn't worth it. The real important thing here though, is what we can find on New Year's Eve, where Dylan and Adrian talk about the effects of a medical study they had commissioned. I already went over what the study said, but the only reason it was done in the first place was to confirm that Beefbrain wasn't real. Meaning that Beefbrain, a hoax, was ultimately responsible for what we're reading now. If not for Beefbrain rumors being spread around, we wouldn't be able to read Dylan yet again brushing off an actual concern with his company so he could work on his buggy car game. We saw it with Tiff's harassment on ChitChat, and we're seeing it again now. Dylan Merchant has a real tendency to make issues he should be working on other people's problems, despite the wishes of others around him, like Samantha. Samantha begs Dylan to pause development on Outlaw so he can work on making the year 2000 update more stable in order to reduce headaches. And we already know that didn't happen. We also see that Samantha was only put on HSPD dispatch duty because she actually cared about people's safety, which annoyed Dylan. Now maybe I'm just crazy, but I'm starting to think this Dylan guy isn't a very good person. Reporting all this stuff has Sam message us and tell us to go look for actual medical documents, which I already discussed. Report those, and Dylan will send us another message saying that he can see our reports, and though he makes it seem like he doesn't know what they're for, he's lying. Why is he lying? Just a few minutes after I reported the second bit of info incriminating him, he sends a message to the entire HAP team saying he's going to turn himself in, but not before we get his confession in the form of Outlaw. Compared to what we saw of Outlaw before, this is empty. I mean, it also works, don't get me wrong, but it's a far cry from what we saw of the previous working version of Outlaw. The only cars we can find are the victims of the Mindcrash, who all ascend with a heavenly white light upon being caught, alongside dropping a text file containing a eulogy written for them by Dylan. Once all four are caught, Dylan himself appears, ascending as well, and claiming he won't put up a fight. Personally, I interpret this as Dylan letting himself go to prison for once doing a good deed in his life, but I've also seen people interpret this version of Outlaw as being a note, and I don't think that's an entirely wrong interpretation. Either way, this is where Hypnospace Outlaw ends. Dylan presumably goes to jail, Tim gets closure and learns that he wasn't the one who caused those deaths, and we're just left to browse Hypnospace and find anything we missed. It's a very melancholic ending, as despite everything working out in the end, the ghosts of the Mindcrash victims loom over the desolate remains of Hypnospace, leaving the final memories of it forever tainted. This is where it really set in for me that Hypnospace Outlaw is about the metaphorical death of the old internet. The Mindcrash claimed lives, yes, but the fall of Hypnospace, and the memorial born of its ashes, the Archival project, is how we know it's truly gone. Besides, as I said earlier, Adrian Merchant and the sponsors of Hypnospace were already pushing people away by taking away NetSendler supports, forcing people to use HypnoCoin, and creating zones nobody wanted, like the Starports. Hypnospace, Web 1.0, was already dying, becoming more and more commercialized by the day. This is what Reckoning hated so much about Merchantsoft, as they saw right through Dylan, and Merchantsoft as a whole, seeing them not as the cool programmers making a fun platform, and instead as the greedy, reckless businessmen they truly were. Speaking of recklessness, Dylan's recklessness with Outlaw and his inability to take actual issues with the software seriously not only was a huge factor in Hypnospace's fall, but also precisely what made him such a fun antagonist to take down. I genuinely liked him at first, as he really does just seem like a guy who had a cool idea and wanted to make it the best he could. But over the course of the game, his true colors are made very clear. He's as much of a businessman as Adrian, and his humanity left long ago. Even if Outlaw functioned properly, it likely would have been the final nail in the metaphorical coffin of Hypnospace, alienating the last of its users, as they would have seen Merchantsoft for what they really are. If you need further proof that Hypnospace's users and the game itself are strongly anti-capitalist, take a look at this message found on the Whool Punk is Dead page. Capitalism keeps killing. If this isn't undeniable proof that Hypnospace Outlaw is about capitalism killing the old internet, ultimately causing the commercialized slop fest that is the modern internet, then nothing is. This is originally where the video was going to end. I've said my piece about what I think this game is about, and this video has gone on for far longer than I meant for it to, but I have a few more things I want to talk about. First, just another quick bit of symbolism, this time in the title of the game itself. I couldn't really fit this into the stuff I was just talking about, but I wanted to point out the double meaning behind the name Hypnospace Outlaw. Yes, it's a combination of Hypnospace and Outlaw, Dylan's car game, but it's also a reference to Dylan Merchant himself. He's the outlaw at the end of the game, after all, meaning he was the Hypnospace Outlaw the whole time. The other thing I wanted to briefly talk about was Dreamstation, Hypnospace's now cancelled sequel. When I first had the idea to make this video, Dreamstation was still in development, and for a while, it actually seemed like it was nearing release. A Patreon got started to fund development, and Jay Tholen put out some new info talking about what was going to be in the game, and then it got cancelled. Now, I will say, I totally understand why it got cancelled. Jay Tholen has said that it was a combination of financial issues and the game just not feeling like it was his art anymore, and I empathize with both of those problems. There's been plenty of times I've had to scrap a creative project because it just didn't feel like me anymore, or because I simply just didn't have the money to create it. So I completely get why Dream Settler was cancelled. I'm just sad it was cancelled at all. From what's been shown, it was going to focus on a rival to Hypnospace, and was going to be set in the early 2000s, an era I am much more familiar with a focus on running your own sites. Everything that's been shown for the game looks phenomenal, and I have no doubts that it would have been incredible had it released. Regardless, I support Jay and his team for cancelling the game, and I wish them the best of luck on their future endeavors. Before I end this video, I want to summarize my thoughts on Hypnospace Outlaw from a more gameplay-oriented perspective, since I spent a good chunk of the last segment just talking about story and symbolism. As I said at the start of the video, Hypnospace Outlaw is unlike anything I've ever played, but only because of its unique presentation and sense of humor. Gameplay-wise, this really is just another point-and-click adventure game, albeit one with a fun internet gimmick, so if you don't like those kinds of games, I wouldn't recommend it. Not that it's bad, far from it, the gameplay just feels secondary to me. Puzzles are pretty easy up until the Archival section of the game, though there is a great natural sense of progression, as each case requires us to use a new mechanic, or go back and use everything we've learned. As I've hopefully made abundantly clear though, the real strength of Hypnospace is its story and characters, as like I said, nothing feels wasted. Everything that seems like a one-off thing is referenced somewhere else, making Hypnospace feel truly alive, and making the Archival section of the game feel all the more desolate in comparison. Overall, Hypnospace Outlaw is a beautiful game, and I highly recommend it, even though I've spoiled the entire story for you. There's a bunch of funny, charming, and interesting web pages I didn't cover, so if you pick up the game, definitely explore those for yourself. Hey, speaking of web pages, we never checked back in on Secrets Uncovered, did we? I wonder if he ever revealed those secrets. Okay, looks like there's a second page now. Choose wisely. I choose love. Okay. Okay. Oh, there they are. Two podiums for two different people. One should compare appeared overnight. Oh my god, there's two presidents! Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. I know this video is a bit different than what I normally do, but I wanted to experiment with talking about something that wasn't horror for once, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay safe out there, and good night.